Okay, picking up where we left off, I'm gonna go ahead and go in a little bit lighter on my number 1 here. I'm gonna go in as light as I possibly can. Super, super light. Okay, so this does look a little bit lighter than this one here. I'm gonna kind of smooth it out and then I'm gonna lighten it up and then I'll probably smooth it out again. Okay, so a little bit of smoothing. Okay, and now I'm gonna take my eraser and I'm just going to kind of tap at this to lighten up this section a little bit. Okay, and then of course we never want to finger blend it, okay? You never want to do that. You just want to kind of lighten this up. And I'm just tapping the eraser against this. It picks up just a tiny bit at a time, and then I can go back through and smooth it. Okay, again, I'm holding my pencil like this. Okay, and then I'll continue on from here. So I might darken this one up just a little bit so it's a little bit more of an obvious difference between the two. Okay, and I can do that by adding another layer, and then I'll move up through 7. Okay, now looking down here at my transition, my gradation that I have, I want a nice smooth transition from light to dark. And so I'm going to do the same thing kind of that I did for this one right here. I'm going to start off with my basic kind of a medium light pressure that I'm using here, and I'm going to shade in this whole thing. And on average, it takes me about 7 layers to build it up, okay? So expect to have yours be about that too. Okay, 7 layers of pencil. Now, the more layers that something has, the more depth it's going to have, right? So the more layers of soil, the deeper the soil is going to be. The more layers of cake, if you're cutting into it, it's going to be like a deeper cake. And the same thing with art. Okay, so the more layers that I have, the more depth my art is going to have. That means that it's going to look more realistic. It's going to look more interesting, right? Which is why we want to add all of those layers. So again, I'm just doing my first layer of shading. And I'm not going all the way to my lightest light just yet, kind of like how I did up here. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and add in my super light area. And I'm going to do this as soft as I possibly can. So I'm going to go here. Again, make sure you shade all the way up to the edge of your shape, or else your shape will look really blurry. It won't look like a defined shape. Okay, I'm actually overlapping this a teeny tiny bit down here. It's kind of hard to see, but then I'm going to go over with an eraser and clean up those edges, just very carefully. Okay, so I'm lightly shading in here. Just like this. Okay, so here is layer number 1. Okay, it's a little bit uneven, but layers 2 through 7 will definitely help that out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for layer number 2. Now, whenever I'm coming over here, I'm not going to go all the way over to the edge because I want it to be light. So I may only have 1 or 2 layers over here, whereas I end up with 7 on this side. Okay, so I'm going to start in kind of a medium layer. And it's always good too to kind of work in a slightly different direction because then you get better coverage. Okay, it's kind of like if you were painting a wall in your bedroom, you would use a roller. And usually when people are rollering, they kind of go like up and down and to the side, kind of diagonal, and it gives them an even coverage as opposed to using a super small paintbrush and just painting, it wouldn't look as smooth on the wall. Okay, so this is layer number 2. Okay, I'm going to use lighter pressure as I get over here. Okay, one of the other things that you want to keep in mind with layering and using pencil is you want to, you kind of want to think about the tortoise and the hare. The moral of that story was that slow and steady wins the race. It's the same thing with pencil. Slow and steady is what wins this race right here. Okay, so I'm lightly shading in. Nice and soft over here, building up those layers. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go in for number 3 at this point. I'm gonna turn my paper just a little. Okay, so I'm still kind of going a medium pressure, not too hard just yet. Good, so here's layer 3. You can start to see a little light to darkness happening. Okay, let's go in for layer number 4. Okay, so there's number 4. I'm going to start on number 5 now. I'm going to start pressing down just a little bit harder in some areas. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start in on layer number 6. For this, I'm using a much harder pressure. And then as I get a little bit lighter to the lighter part of this, I lighten it up so I have a nice blend. Okay, so layer number 6, and I'm going to go ahead, and I think I'm going to use my last layer to kind of go through and smooth things out just a little bit through here. I feel like my dark is looking pretty dark. I might come down here just a little bit more. Okay, and if you feel like you've gotten a little bit too dark on some of your areas, like I feel like my corner here is a little dark, again, you can kind of just tap at it to take off a little bit of that graphite from your paper. Okay, and then if you need to smooth it out just a tiny bit, there we go. Okay, now so pretend that we have all of this done up here, and I have all of this done. Now, what I want to do before I'm ready to turn this in is I want to erase Do you see these fingerprint smudges? I want to erase those. I also want to get rid of this line, this guideline here. Okay, and so I'm going to check out my eraser first, and my eraser's got a lot of pencil on it. Okay, so on my tabletop here, I'm just going to, or you can do this on a spare piece of paper, I'm just going to kind of erase on my table. Okay, and this helps out lighten up your eraser a lot because you've taken that top part off. And on the back, I'm just to make sure I'm going to erase here because sometimes if you have graphite on your eraser, when you go to erase your paper, it just smudges really hard into your paper. And then you're really sad because somehow that becomes erasable. Okay, so I'm gonna fix up my little overhang here. I'm gonna get rid of my borders since I have that space there. And I want to get rid of my little finger smudges because I want this to be nice and neat. We don't want to lose points for craftsmanship. Okay, so then, and I would make sure I have all these erased here. I would go through and erase all of this out this way and make sure I have my name and hour on the back, and then I'll turn it in class. Okay, so that is how you do a value scale, minus the last 4, of course.